For today, we're back on the Mac, and this time for Death Stranding. So we're using the MacBook Air with the M1 chip. It's the base model, so it only has 8 gigs of memory in total. And it's also the MacBook Air again, so it has no fans, so it's passively cooled, so keep that in mind. So for this game, on the Mac, this is the worst case scenario pretty much. And it's got no fans to cool itself, it's got no memory pretty much, it only has 8 gigs, which is nothing, and it's the base model of the M1. So yeah, for the overlay guys, the first row is the actual chip, which is the Apple M1, and then the resolution, and then going down to the third row, it's the FPS, and everything in the brackets is the minimum and the maximum. For the fourth row, it's the frame time, again in the brackets, the minimum and the maximum. For the green line, it's the GPU timings, and the last row is the memory, in the white is the system RAM, and in the green, it's what's being used for the GPU. Cool, let's go into the settings guys, and graphics. Here we are 1080p, and I'm using the low settings pretty much. It's the low settings with some settings turned on like ambient occlusion and SSR. And for upscaling, we are using the quality preset. So this is what you get with the base preset of this game, except for shadows is turned to high. So yeah, let's jump into it guys and see what we can get. So I've gone ahead and played the game for a couple of hours at this point, and I just want to see how it runs and how it goes over time. And to be honest, it does decently well for about an hour, and then the heat soaks in and it can't cool itself anymore, and that's when the issues start coming up. So as you can see, we're getting around 40 FPS almost, in the mid 30s really, and the high 30s. But an hour in the same section here, it fell down into the low 20s. So around a 10 FPS loss because of the heat. And already in the high 20s in this section, that's kind of crazy. So yeah, it does decently well to be honest, if you can cool it. If you can't cool it, then it does run pretty poorly with the default settings. It does slowly fall down and goes from the high 30s all the way down into the low 20s. So yeah, I think it'll be the same situation as RE4, where 720p is a must, and using low settings as well as upscaling. Let's pause it here and look at the memory usage. We are using up around 1.4 gigs of swap memory, so we are going above the 8 gig limit of this system. But during gameplay, it doesn't really affect anything to be honest. It does play smoothly for the most part. Ideally use a 30 FPS cap with this one, and the stuttering should be quite good. But again, heat is the #1 issue with this system. It's just over time, can't handle it, and FPS falls quite heavily. So yeah, on average, we're sitting in the mid 30s with dips down into the low 30s. Again, it's pretty good. The game doesn't stutter or lag, and with an FPS cap of 30, it does much better. Alright, we have to go back to the main city here, which is this way. Let's head on back. And for crashes, I've had one crash so far, but I was alt tabbing out and going to a different app, and that's what caused the game to crash. Alright, pausing the game here. Let's look at the memory usage. It's now using up 2 gigs of swap, which is not good. So slowly it is climbing up, so keep that in mind. So yeah, ideally, if you want a game on your Mac, you do want to have the extra memory. If you got 8 gigs, it's fine for now, but for those more intensive games, it will become an issue. So yeah, that's 1080p. Let's back out, play at 900p, and come back in. Again, the same settings, with upscaling enabled as well. Okay, FPS is now up into the mid 40s. That is very nice. We went from the mid 30s and the high 30s to now sitting in the mid 40s and the high 40s. It's far better. And looking at the graphics, quite good still. It's very sharp. It looks very good. It's definitely usable. So yeah, not too bad to be honest. It's not too bad at all. And we have plenty of headroom now in case of a heavy situation, or in case the thermals kick in and FPS falls down as it goes through. So I do want to spend a bit of time at this resolution and see how far it drops, because I know at 1080p it falls down into the low 20s in those heavier scenes, which is not playable at all. So yeah, at this point it's been like 30 minutes. The game is still playable obviously, it's not doing too bad, but the keyboard is starting to get kind of warm, and the actual chassis is definitely getting a lot hotter. And FPS wise, it's about the same, a bit lower maybe at times, but overall it's still in the 40s and the mid 40s. I think at this point our lowest FPS has been like 33, so still quite good. Use a 30 FPS cap and you'll be fine. And now playing at 720p, FPS wise in the mid 50s and the low 60s. It's pretty good actually. So I think at this point it's safe to say that playing at 60 FPS stable isn't really doable with this system. It can fall down to the 40s quite easily, and in those easier scenes it goes up into the 50s and the 60s. In this section here, we're almost in the 30s, in the high 30s. So I would say for me, this is running much better than Resident Evil 4, It's far more stable, it seems like. FPS wise a bit higher. But yeah, for RE4 it crashed a bunch of times. This has crashed one time. And yeah, all around it does much better, I think. Okay, last ditch effort. Let's go ahead and increase the upscaling to performance. There we go. Let's confirm. Okay, we gained 10 FPS here from the 40s to the 50s now. And down into the mid 40s. So we're gaining like 5 FPS up to 10 FPS. And for the graphics, again, it's quite decent. It's not too bad. It's looking a lot softer, to be honest. But other than that, it's definitely usable. I've tripped over and lost all my stuff. My items, look at this. Everything's fallen. So yeah, that's about it, guys. That is Death Stranding on the Apple M1, on the MacBook Air. I think it does decently well, to be honest. It's definitely playable. Ideally, I would play at 30 FPS. If you only have 8 gigs of memory, then play at the low settings. If you go to a higher preset, the game will stutter and freeze quite heavily. So yeah, it's a skip. And for the resolution, you have the option of playing at 720p or 900p. But make sure you use upscaling, either at balanced or performance, I think, ideally. So yeah, that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time for the next video. See you guys there.